Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer 55551, and I am back with a My 2 Cent video for this week, for the week of June 15th to the 21st, 2025, where I take a look at a couple stories that caught my attention and give you a give you my thoughts and my opinion about them. And we have 4 stories to cover on this week. Mostly this is on Nintendo related or Switch 2 related to a certain extent, which includes the DK Bananza Direct that happened this week. Reports of some people seeing their Switch 2s being banned. Supposedly reports about basically Switch 2 in terms of what games have been selling, with one seemed to be coming out over basically the whole idea behind the whether third-party games were selling lower or something like that though. And supposedly Amazon and Nintendo seem to have sort of put their differences behind, and it's sort of like we're going to see more Nintendo or Switch 2 stuff on Amazon and all. And if you're interested where I got the source of these information, links will be in the description down below, assuming you're watching this on YouTube or Patreon, as well as also the timestamps will also be in the description as well. But before we get started, I would like to do what I like to call the quick My 2 Cents. Stories that kind of caught my attention, but I'm not going to go into a huge amount of details and all. The first one has to do with Ubisoft recently coming out and ensuring fans that the remake of Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time is still coming. Now, as some of you are aware, this game originally was supposed to come out, I believe, like a couple years ago. But when the first trailer was shown, that got hit very hard by a lot of folks who are not happy with the way the game looked and everything like that. This opted Ubisoft to put the game, pull the game from its original developers and bring back some of the folks who worked on the original Sands of Time to come back and help with this game. In other words, this game has kind of fallen into sort of, to some extent, a development hell and everything. And honestly, given the direction where Ubisoft is going lately though, there's been questions of whether or not this game may see the light of day or not. And again, I do believe a lot of this does fall on Ubisoft and the leadership and some of the decisions that they've made and all. We also learned that supposedly there is an investigation Nintendo is conducting over reports of the possibility of the battery in the Switch 2 is basically swollen though, and some people have reported this as well. Now, as far as I'm aware of, I have yet to see anything pop up in terms of the battery being swollen on my Switch 2 and all, and it doesn't sound like it's widespread or anything like that. Nevertheless, I think it is probably best to look, I do agree that it's best to probably look into this just in case there isn't any, major issues that could pop up down the road or anything like that. So we'll see how widespread this is. It doesn't sound like it is though, but I think it's probably best to be safe and sorry and kind of look at that though. We also learned that Borderlands 4, although the game is still planning to come to the Switch 2, excuse me, it has been reported that it will come a little bit later from the original launch date for basically the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and X and PC version though, which I will admit may be a little bit it is a bit unfortunate, but at the same time there are claims that it's possible that Gearbox and other developers got their Switch 2 dev kits later than expected though, so that could be one of the reasons why the Switch 2 version isn't going to come out on the same day as the PS5, Xbox Series X and S and PC version. Hopefully down the road that will change and all, but for now that's where we certainly are at this very moment, to be exact. We also learned that Crash Team Racing supposedly has basically hit a huge milestone. I believe the last time I heard it was like 10 million, as it also has joined Game Pass. So pretty clear, it does sound like the game is doing very well, although I've heard reports about, maybe the Switch version, Switch 1, wasn't exactly that great or anything like that, though that depends on your experience and all. But in either case though, hopefully this opens the door to maybe doing another Crash Team Racing or maybe a Crash 5. I know that got canceled and all, but with Microsoft now owning Activision Blizzard, I'm hoping this maybe opens the door to do something like that. We also learned that according to supposedly sales estimates, not official reports, it's believed that the Xbox version of Final Fantasy 16 supposedly had a rough week, though, that it underperformed and all. Now, granted, Square Enix nor Microsoft has said anything at this time, and supposedly these are just estimates. We don't know the actual numbers or anything like that, though. But still, if assuming this is true, and this is a big if, not a great news. Indeed, a lot of people can point to several factors. Some of it could be it was just shadow drop, which sometimes shadow dropping can be a hit or miss depending on how well it's executed and all. And so there could be many factors, though. But if these estimates are true, not the best start on Square Enix approach to make a lot of their games multi-platform going forward, following supposedly the claim of how Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Final Fantasy 16 on the PS5 didn't perform as well as Square Enix has hoped for. There are rumors going around that basically Stellar Blade could be making its way to the Nintendo Switch 2. Some of this was after it was claimed that the developers shipped off, given the success the game has seen so far, gifted their employees with Switch 2s and all. So far, nothing has been confirmed at this time. However, it is worth pointing out that Lego Horizon Adventure, a game by Sony and by PlayStation, did make its way to the Switch 1 along with the PC and the PS5. So I would say it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility, but we'll have to wait and see if a Switch 2 version of Stellar Blade happens and all. We also learned that unfortunately a delivery truck had some of its products stolen and had about 2,800 Nintendo Switch 2s that were stolen from it. So yeah, it remains to be seen exactly what happened here. If someone broke maybe the lock on the truck or whatever the case may be. So yeah, not exactly the greatest news, especially for those who are waiting to pick up their Switch 2s and all. We also learning that basically Warner Brothers or that Sony might be purchasing some game assets from Warner Brothers and all, and this has to do with supposedly, and I'll be talking about in the movie and TV show, of a change of approach that WB seems to be doing going forward and all. Now, neither Sony nor WB has said anything at this time, and it remains to be seen if Sony will go through with this or not. Some people are thinking they probably won't because of the amount of studios they would have to manage and all. So time will ultimately tell, though, and we'll have to wait until we hear official word from either Warner Brothers or Sony. And last but not least, two major Xbox announcements happened this week. The first one has to do with basically a announcement by Sarah Bond of the next Xbox system. This one being powered by AMD and some of the stuff that they want to do to make it, graphically enhanced, and supposedly the use of AI to a certain degree. It's going to be very interesting to see how this so-called partnership that Microsoft and AMD are talking about. I will admit it does sound almost kind of similar to what we've seen with Nintendo and Nvidia as well, with their partnership that led to, the Switch 1 and now the Switch 2. So it'll be very interesting to see how this strategy plays out. Furthermore, AMD has also come out and delivering on making existing libraries work on next-gen consoles. That includes, the next Xbox and all. And I will say, hopefully they were able to pull that off. One of the things I will give Microsoft and Xbox credit for is that they have done a very good job with their backwards compatibility in terms of getting a lot of these games running, including with, the FPS boost and all. Obviously not every game is on there, though, and that's a little bit unfortunate. Some of that can come down to licensing issues and all, but I will give Microsoft credit for that, and I'm very curious to see how they improve with the backwards compatibility for their next-gen system and all. And in the movie and TV show part of the Quick My 2 Cents, we are learning that there are rumors going around that they are looking for the search for basically who would play Link and Zelda, and apparently the report is claiming that they're looking for actors range between 16 and 23 years old. It will be very interesting to see who they find to play Link and Zelda. I'm still mixed on the idea of a live action one. On the other hand, though, we've seen some live action adaptations do very well. Last of Us is one example, Witcher is another example. Even all three of the Sonic the Hedgehog movies, along with the spin-off Knuckles, did very well in terms of the live action. So who knows? This one may or may not work, so we'll have to wait and see who will play those roles. We also have basically a report coming out of open projections for the upcoming James Gunn's Superman movie. And according to Deadline, they are saying right now that it's on track to arrive with 125 million to 145 million outlooks from NGR. However, various distribution sources believe the real range domestic opening of Gunn's direct movie is more in the 90s to 125 million. So it will be very interesting to see how well this one does at the box office and all. It'll be interesting because we've seen how some superhero movies like Captain America Brave New World did better than expected when its openings, but supposedly the box office did kind of fall off a bit and all, even though I personally didn't hate the film or anything like that. Somewhat of a very similar situation with Thunderbolt, which I also enjoyed that one too. So we'll see how well this one does when the upcoming James Gunn Superman movie comes out. And the follow-up into the Quick My 2 Cent part, there is a report from Hollywood Reporter that has Warner Bros. Game restructuring their IPs and sort of putting them in different like firms or something under Warner Bros. As they seem to be more focused on, the core franchises, Game of Thrones, DC, Harry Potter, Mortal Kombat, and all. This has to do with some games basically not doing as well as they have thought. One example is Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League and how that one bombed very bad for them, though, and there were many questions why that game existed in the first place. Meanwhile, Hogwarts Legacy apparently did very well for them, so obviously whether this pays off or not for Warner Brothers remains to be seen. And last but not least, there is an interesting report as the folks who worked on the classic 90s show Golden Girls, which I remember watching at a very young age and all. Apparently, they talked about how two of the actors didn't get along. I think it was one named Beth Arthur and, of course, the late Betty White, which is... I wouldn't be surprised if there were any backstage drama that maybe perhaps... because we've seen in the past how some actors can't stand working with other actors and all. So that wouldn't surprise me if this is true or not. But still, it is an interesting read from Hollywood Reporter nevertheless. Okay, with our Quick My 2 Cent part now done, along with the movie and TV show part of the Quick My 2 Cent, we'll get started with our first story, and that has to do with supposedly a situation surrounding Amazon and Nintendo that seems to have been resolved and all. Now, obviously, when the pre-orders started opening up for the Switch 2, there were a lot of people that went to as many sites as possible. Some went to Target, some went to Best Buy, GameStop, although they had theirs a bit later and had in-store. Walmart, which I will say I had a easier time getting the Switch 2 from Walmart than other places as well. But also some places like Amazon were kind of absent when a lot of these pre-orders began. And there were supposedly reports of an issue that seemed to have happened between both Amazon and Nintendo. Well, apparently it seems as though whatever that issue may have been, both Nintendo and Amazon seem to have get along, and we're now starting to see Switch 2 stuff pop up on, Amazon's website. Excuse me. From an article from IGN, it reads that, quote, after more than a year of near total absence, aside from a rogue Echo of Wisdom listing, Amazon has finally resumed direct sales of Nintendo-published Switch games in the US. The move breaks a long-running freeze out that saw Amazon skip all sold and shipped by Amazon listings for Switch 2 titles, excuse me, ignoring pre-orders entirely and leaving everything to the third-party sellers. Even after the Switch 2 was officially announced early in 2025, Amazon stayed silent while Walmart and Best Buy eventually rolled out the pre-order page following Nintendo Switch 2 focused directs despite some delays. Until now, only third-party Switch 2 titles like Sonic X Shao Generations were available to order directly from Amazon. First-party launch games such as Mario Kart World and the Switch 2 edition of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom were noticeably missing. That's now changed. While all of these are currently listed as temporary out of stock, Amazon is now accepting orders, suggests serious availability upon updates are on the way. Previously, the Amazon listing for Switch 2 and Mario Kart Bundle were cleared with questionable third-party sellers. Those listings have now been removed, replaced with simply currently unavailable. With Amazon once again offering first-party Switch 2 games, it's worth keeping an eye out on the page. Stock updates for the console itself could follow soon. So it's sort of odd, I will admit, the fact that they did not have a pre-order and all. And I've heard some theories going around of what may have happened, like Nintendo was not happy with what Amazon was doing in terms of selling their products and all. But whatever the case may be, it's just sort of weird that fact that they were not there to take pre-orders for like the Switch 2 when that started to happen, or a lot of the first-party games from Nintendo. Nevertheless, it does sound like whatever the issue was, as I mentioned before, it does sound like this was resolved. So hopefully they don't run into this problem again, especially for those who like to buy like their Nintendo products from Amazon in general. So overall, I would say it was sort of an odd situation, and who knows what the issue might be. I know there's might have some issues, might have some theories floating around of what could happen, but whatever the case is, it does seem to indicate that basically things seems to be patched up and everything. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2. And this one has to do with Switch 2 games, as there has been some reports, even some conflicting ones, about what did and did not do well in terms of games sold on the Switch 2. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of my 2 cent video, and for this one I'm going to be taking a look at the Switch 2 games, particularly with the supposedly sales numbers, as there have been some interesting, or these sales updates that has interestingly come out from several analysts, including one supposedly third-party publisher that is making claims that their Switch 2 game did not do very well and all. Well, we've now been hearing back and forth in terms of how well the Nintendo Switch 2 has done, and supposedly Nintendo did report back that around or a little over 3 million of their system has been sold worldwide, and many believe that this is off to a very good start for the Switch 2 and all, and hopefully Nintendo is able to keep that momentum going. But what about in terms of the games? That's what many people are wondering, how well did the games do? Well, we do have some reports, both at least on the physical and digital side to a certain extent, and there are some analysts that are weighing in over a comment made by at least a so-called third-party publisher, which they claim that there's more to it than what people may see. Excuse me. So over at Nintendo Life, they basically have a report about the best eShop games, at least here in the U.S. and basically, so as far as what the buyers are buying, hold on one second. What the buyers, are buying, as how things are at the U.S. eShop. So, as far as the bestseller goes, we have basically Mario Kart World at number 1, Cyberpunk 2077 at number 2, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom Upgrade Pack at number 3, Fantasy Life: The Girl Who Steals Time at number 4, Detherin, if I'm saying the name correctly, at number 5, Zelda Breath of the Wild Upgrade Pack at number 6, Welcome Tour at number 7, No Man's Sky at number 8, Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster at number 9, and Street Fighter 6 at number 10. In terms of the Switch 2 eShop bestseller download-only games, they have Dethrona, if I'm saying the name correctly, at number 1, Welcome Tour at number 2, Fast Fusion at number 3, Path of the Goddess at number 4, Survival Kids at number 5, Sudoku 1 and 2 HD Remaster at number 6, Rig Racer at number 7, Nobunaga Ambition Awakening Complete Edition at number 8, and at number 9 they have Wild Hearts S. Now, in terms of how about the physical copies, several folks have sort of weighed in this as well. I believe Matt Picatella has weighed in terms of this, but he said that as far as third party goes, he says that let me see if I could find. I know I had it right here. Okay, yeah. He said that Nintendo Switch set an all-time launch week in unit sales with the US with over 1.1 million units sold during the first week, ending June 7, 2025. He said that, quote, the top 3 best-selling Nintendo Switch 2 physical games sold in the week were Mario Kart World at number 1, Cyberpunk 2077 at number 2, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom Nintendo Switch 2 Edition at number 3. However, there's something that kind of caught people's attention in terms of a comment made by basically over a third party though. This has to do with a comment that was discovered by the game business, and according to this report, it says that, and this is from GameSpot reading, one third-party Nintendo Switch 2 game developer told the game business that sales numbers were below our lowest estimation, highlighting lukewarm performance of third-party launch title in the first 2 weeks of the Switch 2 lifespan. So this sort of set off basically some concerns that the Switch 2 may not be great for third parties and everything like that. There's some speculation of who this third party game developer told the game business. Some are pointing to Square Enix, given their history of basically, basically posting, let's see, what is it? Oh yeah, basically saying, setting unrealistic expectations. Others are pointing towards basically, like Sega because of the situation surrounding the Switch 2 version of Sonic X Generation. And others are pointing to the game key card as probably one of the factors that may have led to basically some of these games are not doing well. However, it does seem to indicate some have weighed in on this though. And one of them was basically Matt Piscatella. He basically weighed in on this and basically said this, quote, hate to contribute to a Discord, but third-party shares of Switch 2 software in the US is far better than it was during the Switch 1. Third-party units share for Switch 2 physical software during week 1 reached shy of 40%. For 1 month on the Switch 2 launch, it was less than 20%. He points out that, quote, like it's far too early to claim the best or worst this or that, whatever, when it comes to Switch 2. Sheesh, this thing hasn't even been out 3 weeks yet. He points out, Satana, he also continues, is, look, it's way too early and the size sample of games is far too small to do any of this. My point is that the stats was to point out that it's silly to try and praise out huge finding implications with such a small data set. So you're coming to this because someone took a post completely out of context and used it to try to push some other argument. Well, there it is. Meanwhile, Daniel Ahmed has weighed in about the situation, as he points to, some folks are pointing to the whole game key card as one of the factors that some of these third-party games are not selling, why that may have turned some folks away. And my takeaway from his argument, I feel like, is while it is true that there may be some folks who basically will not purchase a Switch 2 version because of the game key card, it sounds like that might be the vocal minority. Part of it, he says, is, quote, so many people are taking Cyberpunk 2077 at one meant that no one's going to buy game key cards, but that's not the full story. The launch mirror Switch 1's launch in early years were late ports of third-party games that did not necessarily sell well. Other new or exclusive Switch party games from third parties sold well. Cyberpunk 2077 being the one best-selling third-party game is not unexpected, given it was a technical showcase for third parties on Switch 2, and it's already the best-selling on other platforms versus the other games on the Switch 2 lineup. Mario Kart World, like Breath of the Wild, was the game to buy for Switch 2 with an 80% attach rate. Even with Cyberpunk 2077 being the best-selling third-party game, its attach rate and the individual attach rate to all third-party games were less than 5%. In other words, Switch 2 buyers were satisfied with Mario Kart World and Legacy Switch 1 titles at launch and did not buy any of the other Switch 2 launch titles in high numbers. Game key cards are maybe the fourth and fifth factor for why third-party games didn't sell well, not to mention while Cyberpunk 2077 was the best seller, other third-party games like Street Fighter key cards weren't far behind. The reality is that key cards aren't a major issue in the grand scheme of things outside of the enthusiast circle, and having a physical version of the game that requires you to download the game isn't the issue for the majority of gamers. So basically, according to him, he points out that, I mean, yes, it's possible some folks may have not chose to purchase certain Switch 2 games because of game key cards, but he also points out how Street Fighter 6 for the Nintendo Switch 2, which despite being on a game key card, did do well and wasn't far behind Cyberpunk 2077. So I do feel this one kind of was like people were sort of blowing some of this way out of proportion to a certain extent, though. And again, we don't know who this developer that said this stuff and all. But in either case, though, we'll have to wait and see how things played out, down the road for the Switch 2. I do think it's a little too early to claim Switch 2 is dead just because it just came out and everything like that. And there could be many factors to what happened to this developer. It could be the game was just bad or something else, but whatever the case is, I wouldn't exactly write off third-party support for the Switch 2, at least at this time. I don't think we're anywhere near close to the Wii U kind of situation we saw. So overall, interesting, impressive numbers indeed. And I will say that I do think while there might be some concern about third-party support for the Switch 2 because of what this one developer say, I do think I will admit some people kind of blew it out, maybe a little bit way out of proportion and all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 3, and this one has to do with Nintendo banning Switch 2s due to basically using a certain device or something like that apparently this doesn't sit well with Nintendo at all. So we'll take a quick break and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 3 of my 2 cent video, and for this one we're going to be taking a look at a apparently report of Nintendo banning people from using their Switch 2, and this has to do with the issue of pirating games and everything like that. Now, Nintendo, whether you agree or disagree with them, are very notorious when it comes to extremely protecting their IPs and products, though. And there are situations where sometimes I think they're in the right to do that, but I will admit there are times when I do think Nintendo can go a bit overboard, and there are times in those cases I do believe criticism towards them is justifiable at all. Well, recently they have decided to ban some folks, and this has to do with them using what is basically the MIG cartridges, or MIG Switch cartridges though. I remember hearing about this, I think like a couple years ago. So the idea is that you insert your micro SD card in it, and you could basically plug it into the Nintendo Switch. And supposedly the reports of you could play, ranges from your games on there to basically pirated games and everything like that. In some ways, I thought the concept wasn't necessarily a bad idea. The idea of having, instead of putting your micro SD card into the Switch slot, though, you could just put it into the Switch cartridges and everything like that. But knowing Nintendo, they probably were not a big fan of this in any way, and it was pretty clear it was only a matter of time before basically they try to go after this group and everything like that. We've seen them gone after hackers. We've seen have them gone after folks who put out emulators, which I kind of view emulators in a gray area. I understand the game preservation argument to be exact, but I can also kind of understand Nintendo's argument to a certain degree, especially after what happened with Metroid Dread back in 2021 that involved Kotaku and everything. And in this case, it does seem to indicate that Nintendo is certainly going after folks who are using this mid cartridges, especially now for the Switch 2 being out and everything. In an article from Nintendo Life, it reads that, quote, Nintendo is cracking down on policies of sorts of ways during the Switch generation, and is now reportedly taking action on the Switch 2. As highlighted by Kotaku, Nintendo is seemingly banning anyone using the MIG Switch cartridge on its new hybrid system. The Flash cartridge, which allowed users to load backup or pirated games, recently received a firm update allowing it to load Switch games onto the Switch 2 via a backwards compatibility feature. Some photos during the round of Reddit and social media showed error code 2124-4508, which apparently pops up after using this card when connected to the internet. It mentioned how the use of online services had been restricted by Nintendo. This person basically posted saying, quote, my Switch 2 test has been banned after using a MIG Switch card, which perfectly legally dumped of my own cartridge, so it would seem Nintendo can detect something. Similar reports on Reddit are starting to come in. Another person points out it seems to be banning users from online service. It does not appear to be taking the nuclear option, according to this sources. This person wrote, my Switch 2 was banned, but my main Nintendo account is not banned, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Just waiting at this point for Nintendo to drop the ban hammer on my account. Some users in the same thread responded to this account, mentioned how a ban shouldn't come as a surprise at this stage if you take your machine online with one of these cards and all. So I would say to some extent I'm not completely shocked by this in terms of Nintendo going after certain users that are using these MIG cartridges and all. I know there are some who will disagree with what Nintendo is doing, and I can understand to some extent that argument, but at the same time, Nintendo wants to protect their IPs, they want to protect their systems. I get it. Like I said before, they could go overboard with this and all, but obviously they were not happy with what this company was doing with like this MIG cartridges and everything like that, even though the concept I do think is kind of interesting to some extent. Nevertheless, though, it clearly Nintendo is trying to send a message of if you want to use our product, you can't use this unlicensed third-party product on our system and everything like that. And again, I know there are some in the hack or emulation community who may not be, or some, not everybody, but some, who may not be happy about this. But there are those who are pointing out saying, yeah, I'm not surprised Nintendo did this, though. You kind of should have saw this coming a mile away and all. So overall, it sounds like unless the folks who do the MIG cartridge tries to find some way to go around what Nintendo's doing, it does seem to indicate if you try to use this on the Switch 2, odds are you're probably going to get your account banned, and that's something I don't know if it's, let's just say I don't know if it's worth the risk using this MIG cartridge on the Switch 2 or not. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to our fourth and final part, and this one has to do with the Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct that we had happen this week. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our fourth and final part for my 2 cent video, and for this one we're going to be taking a look at the Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct that happened this week. So one of the interesting surprises that we got when the Nintendo Switch 2 had its Direct in April was, in terms of like one of the last games that they showed, was a brand new 3D Donkey Kong game. And for a lot of people this kind of surprised them, because we haven't had an actual 3D Donkey Kong game since Donkey Kong 64 back in 1999. So that was a very, very long time. So to see a brand new 3D Donkey Kong game was definitely impressive indeed. And it certainly was one of the games that kind of caught my attention and all. Now, there were reports, basically of whether or not we were going to get like a direct at all though, and there were certainly many were thinking it was going to be around when the Switch 2 was launched. Others believe it could be after the Switch 2 was going to be launched. I was kind of more in that camp though. And so it was kind of interesting when we later learned that we would be getting a direct, but only focus on one game, which was Donkey Kong Bonanza. Now, it is worth pointing out, Nintendo has done this before in the past. We've seen them do directs focused squarely on just, one series or one game in general. I remember a couple years ago they did it with Hyrule Warriors. Pokemon is a good example. Even other competitors out there which has done directs or showcase usually have something focused on one game. I mean, look at the recent, Xbox showcase as one example. Following that, we had a Outer Worlds 2 direct though, and then the year before we had Call of Duty Black Ops 6, and of course Starfield had their own direct to be exact. So this isn't really anything new. However, we were going into this direct following how not everybody felt like with the Mario Kart World Direct, which though wasn't terrible, it just felt like all it did was just rehashing information we already knew about or was out before. So it didn't deliver the big that I think a lot of people were hoping for. And after coming away from watching this direct, which was about 17 minutes long, I honestly say that I am definitely looking forward to picking up Donkey Kong Bonanza when it comes out next month and everything. So I'm going to break this down into what I like and what I didn't like about this direct and all. I will say in terms of what I like, I am definitely getting, after seeing some gameplay footage of basically a Mario Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom vibe to it. And I am even willing to go as far as saying there may be a little bit of like Banjo-Kazooie to a certain degree, considering the fact that you can change your, get these certain power-ups for Donkey Kong in terms of, ranging from an ostrich that could fly, zebra that could run fast, and even one that turns basically Donkey Kong, and I've heard this meme or quote before, into sort of like somewhat like a Super Saiyan, aka a Dragon Ball Z reference and everything, though, and it looks really neat. Some of the gameplay mechanics also look really good and everything like that. So this one definitely get that vibe too. I'm also getting a little bit of a Disney / Pixar / Wreck-It Ralph vibe to it as well, and I think that's certainly not a bad thing indeed, especially with Kid Pauline and everything being shown here, who turned out to be that talking rock and everything. So that really is sort of neat indeed. And I do feel like, and I might be a minority in this or maybe in a different camp, I do think this is a prequel to Super Mario Odyssey. At least in my book, that's how I am looking at it. But in either case though, it's definitely going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how much inspiration they drew from Super Mario Odyssey to even Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, if they drew certain inspiration of it. And I do wonder if some of these kind of mechanics we see in this game could maybe make its way into maybe the next 3D Mario game. I mean, maybe not all of it, but it will be very interesting if that does happen indeed. The other thing I do want to point out is some of the costumes they have for DK and Pauline. And what's interesting is that instead of it being, just cosmetics there just for the heck of it and all, they actually do have some interesting buffs and features. Like some might have, better swimming, run maybe a bit faster and everything. So it's nice that these costumes certainly have different features and everything like that. So I think that's really good, and not reduce them to just being nothing more than, say, cosmetic look and everything like that. The other thing is that based on what some of the gameplay footage that they showed during this Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct, it does look like basically it is running at 60 FPS or 60 frames per second. It's going to be very interesting to see if it will maintain that despite everything going on in the screen and everything like that. So we'll have to wait and see, but based on what they showed so far, I will say that there was definitely, it did look like it was running at 60 FPS. And last but not least, I will have to say, this Direct, even though it was focused on one game, I thought was better than basically the Mario Kart World Direct. And I think this comes back to, as I mentioned before, is that the Mario Kart World Direct felt like it was just mostly stuff that we already knew about, where the DK Bananza Direct, however, was just brand new stuff we are just learning about. Outside of maybe the Pauline one, which was leaked a bit earlier before Nintendo kind of took it down. But outside of that, everything else kind of was like, I have to give them credit for really keeping a lot of it to their chest and everything like that. So there was more surprises in this one than there was in, let's say, the Mario Kart World Direct and all. As far as what I didn't like, mixed or not 100% sure about, I will say that I do have a little bit concerned about basically the game being maybe too repetitive and all. Excuse me. While it's too early to tell for certain though, I think I am a little worried that the whole break everything, destroy everything, although maybe not everything out there, might basically wear out at some point. So there is some concerns about that. Again, we'll have to wait and see and get our hands on basically the game itself though, but I will admit there is some concerns about that. And I'm also not 100% sure about the whole game share feature, especially since it seemed to indicate you can use the Switch 1 to use the game share feature. And I'm wondering what kind of limitations we could see with the Switch 1 and all. I mean, this is sort of different than what we're seeing with like the multiplayer, which obviously has, you know, Pauline, which sounds like she seems a little bit more effective than what we saw with Cappy in Super Mario Odyssey, but we'll have to wait and see. But it's going to be, I'm not 100% sure how the game share feature will do well on the Switch 1. There may be more stuff we just don't know about, but I'm just not really sure about that. But overall, I would say I came away very pleased with this Direct. Yes, it was just focused on one game, but I will say this Direct was handled better than how the Mario Kart World Direct was. There were a lot more surprises, and this is definitely a game I'm looking forward to picking up next month and all. It is definitely on my radar. I've heard some people claim that this has Game of the Year potential on it, and I do think that Donkey Kong Bonanza has the possibility of getting either winning Game of the Year or being nominated up there for Game of the Year. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see what other games may come out this year or in the fall to see if those get the nomination, but I can definitely see Donkey Kong Bonanza up in that category of getting it though. I mean, it is something I am definitely looking for. So this one is definitely on my radar indeed. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent video for this week. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Amazon and Nintendo patching things up now and seeing like Switch 2 games or a lot of Nintendo products on Amazon? Do you think it was odd that there was an issue between the two and all? Do you think it was either Amazon's fault or Nintendo's fault? And are you glad that they kind of patched things up and everything? What are your thoughts about with the Switch 2 games in terms of sales-wise though? Are you pleased to see something like Cyberpunk 2077 do very well indeed on the Switch 2? Do you think this game publisher who basically said that their game their estimates was lower than expected, do you think that they were spot on about that? Or do you think, like with what Matt Piscatella and David Daniel Oddman, if I'm saying this name correctly, are saying it, in a way kind of feels like people are blowing this way out of proportion to a certain extent? What are your thoughts about the Switch 2 ban with especially, you know, the use of the MIG cartridge and all? Do you think Nintendo is right to ban people's Switch 2 if they are using this MIG cartridge? Or do you think Nintendo is sort of blowing this way out of proportion and all? And finally, what are your thoughts about the Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct? Do you think this Direct was spot on? Do you think this was an improvement over the Mario Kart World Direct that had happened before the Switch 2 launch? Would you have preferred they showed off more multiple games in the Direct instead? And are you certainly hyped or looking forward to picking up Donkey Kong Bonanza when it comes out next month? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal Me or Patreon or Steam Labs. Links will be in the description of this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube or Patreon. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!